A large ant colony can be seen at the beginning of the movie on an ant island. Her 2 daughters are visible here, and she is an elderly ant. Ada, a princess, is one, and Dot, another. Dot wanted to become a pilot but was too young. Ada's upcoming role as the next queen will come with a great deal of responsibility. All of the ants in this area were hoarding food and gathering it for grasshoppers. Because they have authority over them and are responsible for gathering food for them. Here, Flick the ant, who loves to experiment with various things, is introduced to us. However, other people haven't found his experiments to be very successful. They even pose a serious threat. This time, a tool made of enormous food storage is made by the Flick. Along with this, he constructs a telescope and gives it to Ada. She tells Flick to leave because she thinks it is pointless. She approaches Flick simultaneously and informs him that she has high expectations for his instruments. They will eventually bear fruit for us. Later, a warning alarm that signals the arrival of grasshoppers starts to ring. In fear, every ant runs to their home. Everyone departs, but Flick stays behind due to his large instrument. He follows his machine so that he can keep his food in a hoard. His machine, however, causes a stone to fall and all of his food to float into the water. Here, we can see that these ants agree to gather a lot of food twice a year from grasshoppers in exchange for a small fee. Grasshoppers would protect them from enormous insects in exchange. All of the ants in the colony were watching for grasshoppers to take their food and fly away. Grasshoppers rush into the colony, however, when they are denied food. Later, they issue a warning, saying that if they don't gather food, their colony will perish. You will need to store up twice as much food in exchange for them protecting you. Due to the impending rain and the fact that they had not stored food for themselves, the old queen now declares that they couldn't. The grasshopper now cautions her that he will return at the conclusion of the reason, when the final leaf would fall. They'll cancel the treaty and leave after it if you didn't stockpile double food until then. They hold Flick accountable for everything because it was all due to him that the food was wasted. He has an idea if they could make a deal with bugs in exchange for protecting them from grasshoppers when the Flick is called as punishment. They must leave the colony to do this. This is suicidal because there are numerous birds and other animals outside that could eat ants. Nobody in the room is prepared for this. Later, Flick says he'll go by himself and bring bugs for security. To get rid of Flick is a good idea in the eyes of the other ants. This would be better regardless of whether he brings out bugs or not. Later, after packing his belongings, Flick arrives to welcome Dot and his friends. Dot thought he would be successful in his mission. The bug city that has been constructed beneath the trailer city is now apparent. Various bug species can be found here. A small number of bugs have set up a circus that hasn't been functional for a while. Because of this, the circus's owner dismisses them from their position. When Flip finally reaches it, he is overjoyed to see it and realize that it is a different world. Later, he appeals to enormous bugs for assistance, but no one bothers him or pays attention to him. The fired bugs from the job are sitting dejectedly on the opposite side. Because they were laid off and are unable to find new employment. A few bugs arrive to tease them as they are lost in their thoughts. They start squabbling in the meantime. Another explanation is this. Flick, however, views them as fighter bugs that might defend them. To them, Flip goes and begs for assistance. Other bugs think without paying attention to him and concur with him in the hope that he might give them a job. They are moving toward the colony, where the ants are all busy storing food. For grasshoppers, they must gather twice as much food. Dot uses a telescope to observe the flicking objects in the distance that are bugs. He doesn't think he is really back. The other ants begin to quietly notice what is happening as soon as they touch down. They view them as dangerous giant bugs, but Flick introduces them to bugs. The sight of the insects they will protect from grasshoppers makes all the ants happy. Flick's ability to bring such large bunks with him impresses Ada. They plan an evening gathering where the tiny ants show them how these bugs contend with grasshoppers. The possibility of dying bugs causes all the bugs to become anxious. That this is a battle rather than a job. Everyone is grateful to Flick for helping them out of their difficulty and is impressed with him. While Flick is giving thanks, a bug whispers in his ear that these are circus bugs rather than fighter bugs. This movie makes you anxious to listen to it. He claims a secret meeting and separates them. He makes an effort to persuade them, but they object and say they won't join the fight. Flick stays with one of them when they are moving. Dot sees them and begins chasing Flick while swinging a large flower in their direction. Bugs that notice Flick sticking with them fly down to remove him. A nest of sparrows can be seen here, and Flick flees in terror lest a bird eat them. To devour them, the bird flies over and chases after them. In this picture, Dot is also flying while holding a flower in the air. The bird is now getting ready to eat it, and Dot flees in fear as the bird is about to fall. From the distance island, ants notice him but couldn't help him. Before any bugs fall, a ladybug from among them approaches and grabs hold of him. They then run away into a crack in the ground as the bird pursues them. When landing, the ladybug completely enters the crack. It makes an attempt to eat them. Flick has an idea. He tries to take the bird's attention by lifting a caterpillar up. The bird, when notices, leaves, and starts to chase them. Later, Flick tried to bring out Dot and Lady Bud with the aid of enormous bugs. They conceal themselves in nearby bushes, where thrones prevent the bird from entering. They are all saved in a similar manner and appear here in front of all the ants. Ants treat the ladybug. Ada tells Flick that she will soon be a queen, and then they have to get rid of grasshoppers. Flick speculates that grasshoppers are equally frightened of birds as they are. He suggests using a bug to create a fake bird and conceal it in a nearby plant. Later, every ant concurs with Flick's suggestion to Ada. We can see them working together to create an artificial bird in the scene that follows. In the end, it seems like a real bird that they store in a tree's hole so they can use it when necessary. Then, we see a colony of grasshoppers that have begun to displace mosquitoes as a source of employment. The stupid grasshoppers brothers leader is demonstrated in this passage. They already have plenty of food in storage, according to his friend, so they don't need to visit the ant colony. He nods in agreement and says he'll speak with the leader. Later, he goes to his brother and requests that they forego the trip to the leader. The angry leader declares that there is strength in the cohesion of ants. If we stop trying to scare them, they won't be scared or work for the S in the future. And since he refuses, we must keep up the intimidation and theft of their labor. Then they continue on their way to the ant colony. On the opposite side, we see how the ants are having a good time. They're quite happy that finally, they'll get rid of them. Flick states to giant birds if they want to go they may because all the work is done. Afterward, the giant bugs negate to go and decide to stay with ants. They hear a sound here, they see a light off in the distance, and they assume that grasshoppers are approaching. The grasshoppers are coming, so all the ants get ready to fight. But here are not grasshoppers but the circus bugs. Their owner wants to take them back to the circus. When they know that they're not fighter bugs but circus bugs, they become nervous. They were mistaken in thinking that because Flick only works at a circus, he couldn't save us from grasshoppers. Along with the queen, all the ants become furious that how they have believed Flick, and how on their trust they were about to fight grasshoppers. After this, Ada asks Flick to go and never come back. Later on, the queen orders everyone to collect food as much they can because grasshoppers would kill us like this. The last leaf falls too, and they realize that grasshoppers are about to come. When grasshoppers come, they notice no food and the leader becomes angry. Afterward, they start to take some ants in their occupation. Here ants hide their tiny ants in their club. Here Dot listens to the leader saying that he'll kill the queen after taking food. Listening to this, Dot becomes confused and begs for help. He starts to chase after collapsing with grasshoppers. While running from grasshoppers, she tries to fly but because of fragile wings he couldn't. When he gets to a stone, he finds a tunnel underneath it. Later on, the grasshopper comes and pulls it down towards a tunnel and she falls down. Grasshopper believes he is deceased. Dot begins to fly as soon as he leaves, and she reaches out to Flick to tell him everything. Afterward, Flick considers him responsible for all this. Because of him, ants are suffering. He becomes dejected and doubts his ability to offer assistance. Then, every bug suggests that Flick assist the ants. Flick agrees. They know the owner of the circus wouldn't allow him to go. A spider bug imprisons him. They take the owner's bus and reaching there they notice how they have tied Ada and Queen separately. He then devises a plan and instructs the other bugs to drive the van in the direction of the leader and conduct a circus to entertain them so they could divert their attention. It happens the same. Ada and the Queen are set free while the circus is going on. On the other side, Flick along with other ants reaches toward the bird. Ants, Queen, and Ada notice Flick reach towards the bird. Later on, they release the bird so it could frighten them all. When the leader knows Ada and the Queen missing, he becomes furious. When they notice birds, there is chaos everywhere. All the ants pretend as it is a real bird. They act like they're fearing. One of the grasshoppers kindles the bird, and the secret revels as it wasn't real. When Flick comes out, leader becomes furious that how he tried to befool them. He beats Flick and thinks to kill him to set an example in front of everyone that if someone teases them they have to get a lesson. Flick gets up and tells us that we ants are united. If we all come together you wouldn't rule over us. When the leader looks around, he looks numerous ants. He came terrified a little. After a while, rain starts, and the ants start to run. Taking advantage of this, the leader takes Flick and goes. The bugs start to run after, to escape Flick, but there is a lot of brushes in the way. Suddenly, Ada comes and saves Flick. They go down. Flick has another idea. He asks Ada to take him towards the nest of the same bird. Ada leaves him, and a grasshopper appears and a bird comes, but he doesn't bother because he considers it an artificial bird. This bird holds a grasshopper and feeds him to her children. There's a sunny day, Ada becomes a queen, and Ada and Flick become a couple. Flick with his experiments helps other ants and their colony become fine. The bugs leave and the brother of leader grasshopper joins them too. Here the movie ends.